picking into another edition of Sasquatch Encounters. Today's guest comes from us all the way from California. He's been researching for a very long time. He's had some incredible encounters, and he's here today to talk about it. Please welcome Mr. Kirk Brown. Hey, Kirk, how you doing, buddy?
Pretty good, Ed. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, man. Listen, let me say thanks. First of all, Kirk is a good friend of mine. We talk quite a bit. We finally got him nailed down to come on the show and talk about some of these awesome experiences that he's had. And he's laughing at me already. So, Kirk, how did you get involved in the Bigfoot research in the first place? How did that start? What happened with that?
Well, I'm thrilled to be here for starters, especially since I really don't like talking about things too much. I actually got started by having an encounter, and that kind of has led me on this lifetime search, really.
The encounter, I mean, can I tell us about the encounter?
Well, it was probably, I don't know, 13-ish. I'm older than Moses now, but I was probably 13-ish. I was in a group called Youth Conservation Corps, which is summer forestry work for underprivileged kids. And a whole group of us were up in California in a place called Minarets, and we were playing down this hill from the helipad outside the camp station that we were at. And it was a clear-cut area with lots of new growth lanes going through it. And down at the bottom was a stream, and there was probably, my memory says it was like 20 of us down there playing, so reality is probably 10 or 12. But something started moving through the new growth, and the new growth was so tight together, you really couldn't go through it. You know, at my size, you couldn't really go through it without twisting and turning and weaving. And this thing was just breaking branches as it went. And we all got terrified, and we hauled butt up the hill, you know, and it was quite a ways up, my memory, quite a ways up. And whatever it was in the clear growth or in the new growth kept pace with us, smashing through these trees. And when I say smashing, I mean the trees, they were like exploding. Wow. It wasn't just like snap, crunch, pop. It was boom, boom, crash. And it paced us all the way up to the top to the clearing where the helipad was. And then we all ran, you know, probably the other half mile to the ranger station and told our supervisors what happened. And they said, okay, you guys stay in the camp. They went down and checked it out. And a couple hours later, they came up and said, okay, nobody goes down there anymore. They're confined to the perimeter. And so that experience really got me going.
So did your supervisors, did they ever tell you what they saw?
No. I don't know if they found prints. They never said anything other than we were banned.
Wow.
And we were pretty terrified. We left, you know, fishing poles and footballs and soccer balls and everything and never went back and got it. You know, which is completely against the way I am. You tell me I can't do something, well, I gotta try. But, you know, at that point, it was probably the first time there was any prudence in my life, is I said, okay.
Right.
And then,
good.
After that, my next oldest brother, Kevin, took me to a local person in the town that I live in who had an encounter back in the 1940s, and it's a very well-documented encounter. I'm not going to say the name because it's a prominent name in my town still, and I don't know if the kids want it rehashed.
Sure.
But it was a very well-documented case where two hunters were out, and one basically got run into by a Sasquatch and picked up and carried down a hill.
Wow.
Knocked unconscious at the point of impact. So one guy sees, the person that I spoke with sees his partner get just body slammed and go up over the shoulder of this big dark hairy thing that was running on 2 feet and go running off down this hill with his buddy over his shoulder, and the rifle goes flying and it blew off one of the guy's shoes. And the guy goes into shock for about 20 minutes. And when it clears, he goes and he looks for his friend and he can't find his friend. And so he wanders back to the car. And I think he got trailed. I don't remember anymore. I think he got paralleled going back to his car. I think there was some adventure. And his friend showed up maybe a half hour later, and they didn't talk about it for like 25 years. They just pretended it never happened. And so my brother took me to talk to this old gentleman back then.
Did he get hurt or anything? Was there any injuries or anything like that from this encounter?
The guy who got hit was just completely knocked unconscious and had no knowledge of what happened. And the one who viewed it as it was almost like a linebacker tackling somebody. It's just bam. But when it stood up straight, the other guy just draped over the shoulder, and there he was.
How close was this to your encounter, the one that you had?
Geographically?
Yes.
Oh. I'm not sure if... completely out of state.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay.
I can let you know. I'll let you know offline.
Sure.
Specifically what this encounter is called. I'm not so sure it didn't take place in Alaska. Might have been Oregon.
Sure. So this guy, he has this encounter. I mean, he gets literally picked up and carried away. 25 years later, what happens? What happens if he decides to tell the story?
What happened was, because it was his friend who got carried away. So the two of them completely, once they were in the car, didn't discuss what happened. And about 25 years later, one of the two, wrote the other and said, "Hey, you remember this situation?" Because they never went hunting again. That was it. And so then they got together and discussed it. So when they got together and discussed it, you'd been talking about 1966, 1967. And that was the first time for 25 years they even discussed it. And it was just the recollections of the two of them. The one guy's like, I'm walking along and I hear something go crashing through the brush behind me, and I turn around and bam, lights out. And the other guy goes, yeah, I'm walking along, I hear something crash through the brush, I turn and look, and there's something big and dark, and it's running on 2 feet, and it plows into you, and up over the shoulder you go, and down the hill you're gone.
Wow.
Couldn't find you. Found your shoe. There's
almost some solace there.
Yes. Honey, your husband's missing, but here's his shoe. But
So I'm assuming that along with your own experience and in hearing about this experience, I guess you were just pretty well hooked then, right?
I was hooked then, and then probably not too long after that, there was a movie called, I think it was called Sasquatch that came out.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, I was just, that hook was in my cheek, and you could just reel on the line. I was there. There was a restaurant outside of the town that I live in, up the hill, maybe 40 miles away, that was called the Bigfoot Burger Pit. And it was full of news. I'm serious. It was full of news clippings and casts, castings and everything. And I was up there every chance I could get. So.
Well, that's a cool experience here itself. Did they have the Bigfoot shaped hamburgers?
Yes, they did.
That's awesome.
At least that's my memory. Now, that being, 1.5 million years ago, I could be slightly wrong, but that's my memory. Is they had Bigfoot burgers, and I think they had Bigfoot donuts, Bigfoot brownies, something like that. Anyhow, but it was just quite the place. And
sure.
So I live in an area that has a lot of local Indian folklore. So there's like some incredible cave paintings, pictographs, maybe an hour south of me, for instance, on a reservation. There's a lot of folklore right in my area, maybe 40 minutes below it in any direction I go.
Sure. Well, if I'm not mistaken, you were just south, about 75, 80 miles, I guess, from the Willow Creek and all that area, give or take, 100 miles maybe? Am I not even close?
I'm sorry. Professionalism. It's only an inch on a map.
Yeah, exactly. You don't know what
on
is
a map, it's this close. I am, from my house to Willow Creek is probably an 8 to 10 hour drive.
Oh, I'm close.
You are. Same state.
Well, I guess the idea though was that you're in a, I put that out there because most people know where that is, meaning they're going to get an idea of where, that you're in a pretty good area already with the history alone. And so that's why I put that out there. But, I guess you're right. It's only, an inch or two on the map, so it's got to be close to 100 miles.
It's got to be close. California's not that big. But, yeah, no, I'm an awful long ways from that, and I've spent more of my time on the eastern Sierra Nevada range, which is our main mountain range here in California, on the Nevada side of the slopes, and actually more over towards the desert areas.
Sure.
And
then you go out quite a bit, and you do a lot of research. I mean, how long have you been researching Bigfoot?
Ooh, forever. Literally.
He did say he was Moses. So
yes, yeah. He came down. He actually was up on the mount twice. He came down the first time with the 10 Commandments, and the second time with a great book by a guy named Ron Berry. So when Ron Berry wrote his book, that's probably when I started reading, and I still have that book.
So you go out.
Yes, your turn. Stay on cue.
Okay, so you've been researching for a very long time. You've had, your encounter when you were younger. You've had the accounts from your friend who witnessed a terrifying event.
Yes.
You're basically in a hot spot. What exactly, when you go out, what are you looking for? I mean, people say they go out and look for footprints or whatever. There's got to be more to it than just looking for footprints because they're just too hard to find.
Well, honestly, I go out and I look for gold. So,
don't we all?
Yeah, well, I do. And unfortunately, I find more footprints than I do gold, and I don't find that many footprints, so that tells you something right there. I'm not too bright. I'm usually into the history of an area that I get into. Mm-hmm. The encounters that I've had have actually almost always been connected with me out mining, one way or another, either out in the desert or in the Sierras. The encounters that I've had have been in connection with me being on a mining trip, someplace remote usually. But if you're out bigfooting, I guess you're looking for some form of concealment for covered movement through an area. A lot of people picture the desert as being flat. It certainly is not. Waterless, it definitely is not. And lifeless, far from it. But you're looking for areas that have water, food sources available, where, somebody like my size of, 230 pounds, they can live off the land. So you want something 800 pounds can live off the land.
Sure.
And, a source of water that's not stagnant.
So you're going out. You're basically when you go out and you're doing your research. I mean, and I'm assuming what you're saying is that you're doing it while you're actually gold mining. You go out looking for gold, and then you see these things while you're out. You're not necessarily looking for them, but you see them.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that would be. I have a tendency to go into areas. Well, I've got two different areas that I hit different times of the year, and I spend as much time in them as I can. I have an awful lot of interactions happening in those areas each year. I just go in and I try and set up a pattern of behavior on my part, and whoever I might be with, and just kind of mellow out, chill.
Sure.
And just see what happens. I have a tendency to.
Go ahead.
I have a tendency to pick higher elevation spots, whatever zone I'm in, higher elevation, and try and stay close to a ridge line.
Sure.
Because I think most of the travel is ridge top for the areas that I'm on, or very close to or right below the ridge line.
Right.
I don't know. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. And I can tell you that it's funny because we recently talked to Mike Dice, and Mike was telling us about his encounter and what he saw through some binoculars. But if I'm not mistaken, didn't you see that first and hand him the binoculars to look at? Is that correct?
That would be very correct. Yeah, I watched it for quite a while.
So what did you see? I know Mike said that he saw basically what looked like the upper chest area, maybe an arm, and he said he watched it for like 5 minutes. And I know you watched it before that. Did you see any full body? What can you say, I guess, to collaborate what Mike said, so maybe we can piece together?
Well, I honestly didn't sit down and ask Mike exactly what he saw. I told him to write down what he saw before he talked to me. And we've talked in trips. Yeah, and we've talked in trips and traps. So that's a really important thing for researchers. I'm gonna shift backwards on that real quick.
Please do. I agree. I think it's very important.
Yeah, it's huge. I have a law enforcement background, and when you do an investigation, you want each person's story, because each person's going to see things a little bit different, and you want those differences in the story. You want those differences. You do not want them to completely agree.
Sure.
And it's important that the other person write down what they saw, and you write down what you see before you sit down and talk about what you saw.
Very good.
And then you don't change your report, because each of you had your own experience. Even if you saw the same thing, you each have your own experience. You don't change your report, but you don't, if you talk to each other about what you go through before you write it down and document it, you have a tendency to incorporate what the other person saw or what the other person went through into your report, or they incorporate parts of yours, and then the report won't really hold up. It's not a factual report.
Sure, it makes sense. One would influence the other.
It can. Yeah, it can. So I'm really hardcore about that. So that's a really important thing. If you're gathering evidence, you're building files, you want to do that as a baseline action consistently. That's one of the things you need to do consistently, because people are going to question you. People are going to question your motives, and they're going to question how you do things. And you need to be able to answer those questions, and you need to answer them consistently. And the way to do it is to set a pattern of behavior. This is the way we're going to do it, and this is the way it goes.
Right.
So, enough of the lecture series.
We're going to digress. We're going to go right back to where we were, and I thank you for that. And actually, just for the listeners, I want you guys to know this is actually why I wanted Kirk on this show, is because of not only just his experience, but his background in law enforcement, the experience he has in the field, and I wanted him to come in and talk about not only his experiences and this, but I wanted him to share tips and advice, because it's so important that when these new researchers that are going out, that they understand the importance of the evidence that they're collecting and how to do that. And Kirk is exactly right. You write down exactly what you saw. You don't elaborate at all on what the other person saw. You only elaborate on what you saw, and then you can compare notes later. But Kirk is exactly right. Keep your story different from that person's story. Don't talk about it, and then see what it sounds like after that. Which is basically kind of what we're doing here. Because we heard Mike's story. We heard what Mike said he saw, and I believe Mike saw something absolutely. So I wanted to hear what you saw. Beyond what Mike saw, let's talk about what you saw.
All right. I have, first off, no doubts that Mike saw. None whatsoever. It was in very close. What I saw, the shape was darker. It was primarily in the shadows. It was slightly uphill, like an elevation gain of maybe 50 feet and a distance of about 100 feet, give or take a little bit, but about 100 feet. Thick brush, couple of trees, and it was by a couple of narrow trees. And so I was actually able to see, as it was peaking, I was able to see this little potbelly sticking out from behind the tree, which kind of made me laugh. Because every time I would lean back, I'd still see your potbelly, and it would sidestep real slow. It would lift up its leg and move it to the left or the right, and it would sidestep. And we're talking it would do this for maybe a distance of 20 feet each direction, very slowly, very slow. So you're just sitting there watching. I didn't see any evidence of breasts, and I think it would have been evident in profile. Certainly didn't see a penis too far away for that. Sure. But I was able to see hair sticking out. We're still talking a shadow shape, basically. Sure. But I was able to see fans of hair, because I was looking through binoculars. I was able to see fans of hair up around the shoulder. I wasn't able to see facial features. It didn't seem to me like it had a sagittal crest. This would be the second sighting I've had where I'm going to say not really a noticeable sagittal crest. It was really pretty awesome. I'm pretty sure it was a juvenile. I was able to see arms and the movement away from the body. I was able to see the legs, but not really above where the knees would be.
Sure. Now, do you think that there's some correlation to the sagittal crest in a juvenile as opposed to an adult? Is that something that they grow later as they get older, do you think, or is that, or do the youngsters have them in your experience? And I don't know what you've seen in the past. You and I really haven't. We've talked quite a bit, but we've never really talked about your experiences, and so this is new for me too. So that's why I'm asking. I mean, I guess I don't know what you've seen. Okay. What I have seen predominantly for me, seeing things is I've seen shapes moving very quickly. I've seen shadows moving in shadows or behind trees or distance things in movement. But I've only got two up close and personals. This one with Mike Dice being one of them. And neither of those really had what I'm going to say is a sagittal crest. Both, to me, would be juvenile. Both of my sightings would be juveniles or, teenage years. So I can't answer you on the sagittal crest. What I can say about that is I have responded to numerous reports and gone out and talked to numerous people where a sagittal crest has been described. But there's lots of different characteristics physically that seem to be around. It seems to be like describing just a human being. We're different. Sure. So I can't comment on the sagittal crest from personal knowledge. I can say that the majority of the sighting reports that I've done have where there's been a clear sighting that has been present. It's present on Patty. It's present on some other photographs I've seen. But what I've seen personally,
wasn't that if it was there, it wasn't that obvious. Or at least
Right.
it just didn't smack me in the eyeballs and say, here I am.
Sure. Well, and of course, if it was walking sideways, like you said, left to right, very slowly, it was, I'm assuming, facing you, so if it didn't turn the head and you didn't get a side view, you probably wouldn't see it anyway.
Yeah, but it did turn to its side when it got by bushes and trees to try and hide, which just didn't really work.
Right.
And from a face on with a sagittal crest, I should have been able to see it because, honestly, certain breeds of dogs have sagittal crests. And by God, you can see that when they're face on to you.
Mm-hmm.
You can see it. No two ways about it. So I'm just not so sure that it's just not a difference.
Sure.
I don't know if that's answering your question or not.
No, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely does. So
Always happy to muddy the waters.
we were counting on that, Kirk.
Yeah. You came to the right person.
Yes.
My eyes are twinkling. Brace yourself, Kathleen.
I knew I had to have you on to muddy the waters. So your very best personal sighting where you got the best view of one, tell us about that one.
My very best personal sighting with the best view was last spring in an area that has just been fantastic for me. It's the one I keep trying to talk you into coming out and camping at each year.
Which I'm going to, by the way, eventually.
Huh? It will happen.
Eventually, yes.
When it's meant to be, it will happen.
Yes.
I was just actually out slopping around and wandering through the brush, which is incredibly dense. Incredibly dense. Incredibly dense. And I was actually following a stream bed, so I had a little bit of clearing going on. And I bebopped around this corner, and there's one standing behind a bush about 30 feet in front of me. And it's just looking at me. And it was like, hi, here I am. It's me. This is a site that I've for years and years have had that start with rocks being thrown. And I'm one of those where you throw a rock at me, which is pretty cool. It depends on how it goes whizzing by your head. But, basically, if it arches up in the air towards you, whatever it is, rock, stick, log, kind of hard to hold the bowels in check on a log, but, you do it. But if it's arching towards you, then it's an underhanded toss, so it's not really a threat to me. And so I have a tendency to pick up something smaller and kind of lob it back in the general direction. And sometimes you get these really, and you just kind of de-escalate the situation. And then I just go ahead and mosey on and do my gold panning, type thing, or do whatever I'm going to do. But you can de-escalate these situations where you're in and out of these areas frequently, and just kind of get them used to you is my general idea, at least. Be non-threatening, just be mellow, and just, this one doesn't intimidate you. Now, when it goes zing and it goes right by you, yeah, okay, I'm intimidated. It's time to move on. And yeah, there's the occasional one where you sit there and you check your wallet and make sure you have your cigarettes, and
right.
You do check wallet check, cigarettes check. Short pants loaded to capacity? Check. And then you try and, while shaking your leg, as you walk away, you try and maintain some dignity and calmness, But I'm just being serious here. Anyhow, I bebopped around this corner. This is a place where, and I've been telling Dan this too, is, de-escalate, toss underhand back when things get thrown at you. And this is a site where I took tennis balls to one year. I said, I wonder. And I had a pine cone come flying out at me, and I lobbed in a tennis ball. And about 10 minutes later, the tennis ball comes bouncing back out. And that was like the happiest moment of my whole life.
Sure.
Was now I'm getting to play catch. This is, to me, so damn cool. So it's the same site where I had my sighting, and it was just like the eyes were, I can't describe, they were amazing. I didn't see any whites. If there were white, it was at the extreme corners, of the eyes. I didn't see teeth. There was a very thin, clear space where there was skin above the eye, but very thin, like maybe the width of a finger. But there was clear around the nose and the sides of the cheek and right up above, but there was also some hair around the upper lip. But right up above the upper lip was pretty much where the hairless spot died off. And there were like skin wrinkles that were just, it was so amused. You could just feel that it was just amused. and I just don't know how to explain it. But I sat there and just looked at it, and it just sat there and looked at me, it seemed like I have no idea how long. It seemed like forever. I've been in enough situations to know that forever can only be 10 seconds sometimes. But it was significantly longer than that. We just looked at each other, and I'm like, okay, cool. And I talk when I'm out in the woods. I carry on conversations with myself. Hell, I do that in town. It's fun in the grocery stores. But, I just wanted to, I'm leaving. I'm at that age where I can do these things. It's expected of me in public. But, I did I'm leaving now. I put out my hands so, my palms were facing it. And I just backed off. And, I went my merry way. But all the time I was backing up, it's just still sitting there looking at me. And you can see the crinkle around the side of the eye. And I'm thinking, this guy's laughing at me.
So let me ask you. It sounds like you had a really good look at this thing. Did it appear more human or more, primate, ape primate?
It was more human-like. The nose was flat-ish. Operative word being ish. It was flatter than my nose is, but it still had a little bit of a tip to it.
Sure.
The lips were thin. Just a lot of intelligence in the eyes. I don't remember seeing pronounced ears. I know they were there, but I don't remember seeing like pointy ears or anything like that. The chest was really human. The posture was very human because it was standing straight up. There wasn't any hunching going on. In comparison to my body size, it was massive.
Right.
But in this particular case, I didn't feel any threat at all. I felt some amusement. I felt very happy. It was probably, I came out of this situation, it was probably 6 months before I told my girlfriend about it because I was still processing what had just happened to me. Because to me, it was just, I don't really know how to explain it, but
I've heard that several times where someone will have an encounter and then their mind, it doesn't recognize what they're seeing, so it takes a while to comprehend. Like, I just saw one, and it takes their mind a time to. So I definitely understand. I've heard it a lot.
And, I don't think I was going, I think that played into it. In fact, I know that played into it as well. But I've been at this for so damn long. When I go out, for the people who don't know me, I'm usually out for a week and a half to 2 weeks each month into the woods doing this crap. And I do this stuff by myself usually. So, at this point in life, I've seen enough to know it's there. Got no doubt. None. No interest in proving its existence to anybody. Now it's just a personal quest. But I also took me a while to process the threat level of what I just went through. And that kind of...
That's a great point. Did you feel threatened?
No, I did not. Not at all. Not at any time. In that one. Not at all. Not at any time. But that didn't mean I didn't miss some type of nuance. So because I nitpick on details, it took me about 6 months to pick through what happened and what responses mine and its responses were, or appeared to be, or felt like, because assumptions are different than fact. I can assume it was friendly. If I had to write down what happened, it was a friendly encounter. But I have to also make some other assumptions. It's an animal form, or it could be an animal form, and therefore it might not have been such a friendly thing.
Right.
You just kind of got to work your way through that and figure out the threat level. And it took me about 6 months to really go through that and get that squared away.
Sure.
To where I was comfortable and could carry on a conversation to a limited form about what happened. And then I told my girlfriend. I think Mike Dice is probably the second person I told.
And now everybody else is the third.
Yes, you are. Yeah, it was very human-like. And it was just really, to me was a very wonderful experience, because to me I felt like, hi, here we are.
Sure.
We've been playing ball for years.
You mentioned taking a tennis ball out, and now you would actually throw a tennis ball in. And did you ever have one thrown back to you? Yes,
I have. And that's why I say, because you throw on a pine cone and another pine cone comes flying back, or you toss a rock underhanded and another rock comes back. You can't sit there and say, well, that's the same rock. Sure. But you toss in a pine cone, you toss in a tennis ball or something like a tennis ball, and now you've got sentient thought going. I'm serious though, you have now moved from kids playing pranks, type thing, or an odd occurrence, to, there's really some intelligence here.
Sure.
That's tossing back what I tossed to it. And then you tossed it back. And then it comes bouncing across the path. Nothing is more fun than losing the damn tennis ball, hiking out 4 hours later, and then having the tennis ball bounce across the trailhead path right in front of you, just as you're getting to your car. And you sit there and you go, okay, no shit. Thanks, bud.
Yeah,
see you next month.
That would be pretty wild. I mean, that would be really wild.
Yeah, and that to me, that area to me has just been a fantastic experience. And the mountains to me are kind of a soul-clearing area anyhow. I go out there or into the desert, and that's for peace of mind, soul, and spirit. And just to have things like that happen is absolutely fantastic.
Of course.
Yeah, I don't recommend, to people who are just going out and getting their boots wet and this stuff, to ever let your guard down and never make the assumption that everything's going to be a warm, fuzzy, friendly encounter.
Well, I think that's a good point, because even on your encounter that you're talking about here, you said you didn't feel threatened. But if there's a juvenile Sasquatch who just is standing there saying, hello, here I am, Molly's not far away, and she's not going to be as friendly if she feels like her baby is in jeopardy, So, so you should be, maybe not feel threatened, but you should at least take caution, and I agree with that.
Yeah, you do. You got to pay a lot of attention to your gut instinct, and if your gut instinct tells you to, it's time to wander off, and you back up out of sight, and then you can run. And believe me, that's a natural reaction.
Sure.
Somewhere between that or just freezing in place and soiling yourself. I've done it. I've done it more than a few times. So I will just put it out there and say it happens.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks for sharing that, Kurt.
Yeah, don't mention it. I'll sell you my underwear. Anyhow.
Not buying. If anyone wants to buy his soiled underwear, please let us know. We'll
I'll even autograph it for you. Autographed soiled underwear. Anyhow.
This joke can take a lot of bad turns here, so we should probably just end this joke now.
You probably should, because if there's a bad turn, I'm going to take it. Twice.
All right, Kirk, let me ask you this. Now, the best thing about having you on the show, besides hearing your own personal encounters, and the idea of throwing a tennis ball in the woods and then 4 hours later having to throw it back out is, I mean, that's incredible.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
But the best part is what you bring to the table, to the community, because of your experiences and your experience in general. If you were going to offer a new researcher who wants to go out and they want to have their own encounter, they're looking for something, what's your advice?
Oh, man. We're assuming that I know anything. So I have to laugh at that thought process.
You're being modest.
Well, anyhow, don't go alone would be number one, or let somebody know where you're going. These are two rules that are very important, and I always ignore them. And someday something will happen to me, and I'll just be in the newspaper is missing.
At least let David Paulinas know where you're at.
No, it's okay. Great guy, though. I just don't want to be a chapter in his book. That's why I don't want to let him know.
That's right.
I'd be missing 411. Who cares?
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. Anyhow, but no, he's a great guy. Pick somebody you can go with. Pick somebody reliable that you can go with, preferably with. One of the two people should have at least like some form of CPR, basic first aid, because I can tell you from experience, trying to hike out of a mountain, even trying to hike 5 miles with a broken ankle, can take a couple of days over, cross country. So,
that would be...
4 or 5 miles can be a long ways with a minor injury like a broken ankle. So, go with somebody, who's not like me, who got kicked out of the Boy Scouts for electrifying the urinals to get the electrical badge. True story. I consider it as a proud moment.
Here's your darn badge. Come on.
Yeah, I didn't even get my badge. Just shown the door. They didn't see the humor in that. Bastards. Anyhow, but so pick somebody reliable. Pick somebody kind of calm and mellow to go with, because you don't want a whole lot of anxiety when you're out there. You don't want to. It builds into what you go through, and it builds into what you project out into the woods or whatever. Your energy goes with you and goes out there. And you put out a lot of anxiety and fear, then you're going to get an appropriate response to that.
Makes sense.
Research. Read everything. Everything. Everything that you can read it. I recommend the BFRO webpage for their reports. It gives you great ideas on how to format your reports and information that should be included. But pull up all the data you can, and I don't care if you believe that Bigfoots are aliens or reincarnated Native Americans or changelings or primates or another humanoid form. Whatever your belief on that is, doesn't matter, but research it. Research it very heavily. You can't read enough.
Sure.
Even if you don't agree with what you read it. Because the more opinions you have, or the more other opinions you read, the more you open up your mind to other possibilities. Because you are going to run into things. They are going to happen where you are not going to be able to explain it. Not going to happen.
Makes sense.
And, it's better to have more knowledge than just a spoonful when you get into those situations. Boy, let's see, what else?
I've got one more, and I want to get your take on it. I've talked to, a lot of people, and this particular tip comes up a lot, so I like to reiterate it on as many shows as I can, just in case someone misses the other ones. But what about studying the area you're going into before you go in. Would you consider that pretty important?
It's life or death. Can go that way. And you also need to study the animals that are in that area.
Correct.
You want to know them very well. You want to know about rattlesnakes. You want to know about bears. You want to know about, believe me, you want to know about mountain lions. You want to know about the animal populations. All that stuff is readily accessible for the area you're at. You also want topographic maps of the area that you're going into, and you want the adjoining areas because you can get weathered. The areas that I work in, I can get snowed in June. I can also get snowed in early October, late September. I need to have a plan for a secondary route out. Some of what I do is in box canyons. Well, what if a bear is between me and the exit?
Right.
And, so far the let's face it down and make lots of noise and look big just tells it I'm a big hamburger. I want a secondary exit.
Sure.
And if the map says there isn't one, I want to know what's on the other side of that map.
Great advice. Great point.
And just pre-plan things. Let people know, I'm going to be in this area. I usually do I'm going to be within 60 miles of this spot. And if I'm not back 10 days after my due date, then you can start to worry.
Sure.
But give me that extra 10 days because I do get distracted and wander off dirt trails and,
where Kirk is going isn't places where, you take your kids on vacation. Kirk's going out into the deep stuff, and he's done some great stuff out there. He's found a little bit of gold, found a lot of footprints. You found some other. And it's. I always get a little frustrated with Kirk because he doesn't share his stuff very often. But
actually, I will talk to anybody. I will share my information with anybody. Mm-hmm. If I think that they are going to use that information to go out and track and try and shoot one, I won't share. But quite honestly, I talk to many people about what I've been through or what I see, and go to people for their opinions on what I've been doing, what I see. So I do talk to people. I just don't publicize it, I guess.
Right. Well, you've got some great friends, most of which I know, or at least some of which I know, who are really good friends of mine. And everybody speaks very highly of you, and I have no reason to doubt anything you've said. Your advice has been dead on. I do want to hear if you've had a lot of experiences, maybe not so much sightings. Has there ever been a time when you felt threatened, where you felt like, oh my gosh, look, I better back out of here now,
You bet your bippy. Yeah, I've had a few of those. Different levels of fear. I got stalked while hiking here in the Central Sierras many years ago, back when I was younger and I was chasing dinosaurs. I got stalked and paralleled for the better part of 3 days. Wow. And I got no peace and quiet. I mean, I was building campfires in backcountry areas that were bonfires. And deep down inside, I was praying to God that a fire station would see it and report it. And I'd get out of there. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Because I just didn't think things were going to go well for me, and I didn't know what was going on. And I was scared to death. I was scared. I've been much less scared in combat, and I've been much less scared in riots. I was very afraid.
Sure.
That was very unpleasant because every night that I built a fire, whatever it was, circled it circled outside of the camp light all night long. I mean, I didn't get any sleep. You know, this thing was just driving me batty. I had, the energy was just really bad, really bad. I had an experience up in the area, same area that Mike Dice and I went into. I've also been up in that area with Teresa Nutley. She's a local in that area. She's somebody else I share it with, and she does pretty good. And I found a shelter. Not what you think of as a shelter like you see on YouTube. This is more logs drawn into the shape of a V, but none of them are from that hilltop, from the trees on that hilltop. And
so
the brush is
its own trees up to build the shelter.
Yeah, actually, there was a down tree up there, and that was like one of the main parts of the shelter. But everything else was put in from at least 400 feet downhill, and fairly large. And and I have this thing is I check these when I check shelters because I get called out to look at things that are shelters, and they're usually like poachers' blinds, and I run a metal detector, and I'm looking for bullet casings or.
Right.
I look for cigarette wrappers or whatever, and usually you can find things like that pretty quickly. And I didn't find anything like that at this site. But when I was up there circling it and photographing it, just across the ridge top, which was maybe 60 feet away, it was just this piercing scream, yell. I mean, I felt it inside me. I felt my chest quiver. I felt, like my kidneys quiver. I felt my kidneys quiver an awful lot, right? I got to tell you.
Well, when you're as old as Moses, you probably will.
Yeah, that happened. And it scared the bejesus out of me. At the same time, in my mind, I was thinking, I got this thought, and I'm not talking like telepathic or, I don't really go to the telepathic mind projection, but the thought process was just leave us alone. It just made me think of my mom telling me, stop playing with that. Go outside. But, it was reverberating. I mean, my body shook. I could feel it. I could feel it inside me, my inside shaking with this thing. It just screeched over the hill. And, and I was like, okay, I'm leaving. And I did leave. I didn't go running like I thought I would, but I did leave. And after that experience, I probably slept for about 3 days. That just was emotionally exhausting for me. I've been through a couple of bluff charges. We know some people who want to go through a bluff charge. I don't encourage it, but if I ever have the privilege to be out hiking with that person, give me the heads up when you're going to initiate it so I can put a couple acres between us, buddy. I'll come back for your shoe.
We're not going to mention any names because we don't want Dan Lindholm to get upset. But,
no. But Dan, I'll bring your wife home your shoe.
Well, I mean, I think I see where he's coming from, though, as far as he wants to experience that to solidify the other things that he's experienced, And obviously, as long as it's a bluff charge, I'm okay with it, too. It's that not so much the bluff ones that I'm worried about.
The bluff charges are amazing because they're like, for where you live, a real sudden heavy summer storm. They come out of nowhere.
Sure.
They make a lot of noise, and you don't know what's following. And it, and when they end feet from you. Not an acre, not 100 yards, but, they end in the trees about 20 feet away from you. And these things happen so fast that you basically have enough time to think, what the hell is that? And that's probably not what you're going to be thinking. But, people say, well, why didn't you take pictures? Like, yeah, buddy, you do it. Once again, wallet, check. Cigarettes, check. Pants filled to capacity? Oh, you betcha. Camera, okay.
when I was in southeast Kentucky doing my investigation down there, and I heard the wood knock, I did not have my recorder on. You know,
yes.
when I saw a figure walking down a mountain across from me, the mountain across from me is pretty far away, but I did not get it on film. You know, you don't. It's odd because when you're in the situation, your mind doesn't work like it does when you're not in the situation.
Correct.
It really doesn't. And so it has, you know, I mean, how can you be prepared unless you've got it rolling already? How can you be prepared to
and point it in the right direction?
Point the camera at the right direction at the right time and catch a bluff. I mean, you would have to have it rolling already. That's, I guess. Otherwise, I'd be surprised if you did.
Yeah, that's. I agree with that. And for researchers, I don't care who you are. If you take everything that everybody on the internet tells you you need to have with you,
right?
Well, bring a Sherpa to carry your food, but don't be disappointed with yourself, ever, ever, ever. If you run across something or find a piece of evidence and you just don't have that proper gizmo that you need for that at that time, but it is back in the car, don't feel bad. You know, I've got a pile of footprint casts, and yet I run across beautiful ones when I don't have plaster, or I've got plaster but not enough water, because water is for staying alive.
Right.
And I just can't urinate right now.
Sure.
You know, but don't beat yourself up. A lot of people do that. A lot of people get frustrated or get embarrassed. It happens. It happens to everybody.
Absolutely.
I am positive it happens to everybody. You know, you can try and plan for it, but do not beat yourself up when that experience happens and it just doesn't work out for you the way you want it to. Don't worry about it. Move on. You'll get another one.
Well, Kirk, I'm gonna tell you, man, I think that's great advice, and I'll tell you what, you've definitely brought a lot to the table to not only this conversation, but as well as the field in general. And I know, based on previous conversations we've had, that you're modest, and but I'm gonna tell you, with all sincerity, I respect personally. I respect what you're doing. I've respected you before I ever talked to you, and I'm excited to have an opportunity to talk to somebody that I've had respect for even before I ever spoke with them before. So, and I mean that sincerely.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
You're very welcome. And I again, can't thank you enough for coming on the show. Is there anything that maybe we didn't touch on that maybe you wanted to elaborate on, or anything that maybe we missed?
Of course, and I'll think about all those things after we're off. That's the way it works.
Kirk, when I say and we're out, it's pretty much done. Just,
Yeah, that's what I call you up at 3 o'clock in the morning, because I know you're awake. Nah, the whole thing's a learning experience. I don't consider myself as knowing very much, but there is an awful lot of a little bit to know when you're out doing that. Be safe when you're doing it. And I'm not talking about carrying guns, be safe, but just, keep safety in mind. Take some bear spray if you're in bear country, for God's sake, and don't become a statistic. Don't be embarrassed to ask other people or to reach out to other people and ask questions. And when you do that, do not try and impress the person you're talking to. I talk to lots of who's, and I usually just shut up and let them talk. And they can be rehashing the same things I've known for 40 years, but I am not going to tell them that I know that.
Right.
Because this is going to lead, I let you keep talking, it's going to lead me to the point that I want answered. And, so just ask, do not be afraid. There's lots of good people out there. Check into them. If you're on Facebook and things like that, check into them and then ask them.
Right.
But check into them first and then ask.
Absolutely.
And do not be embarrassed whatsoever to do that. Do not be embarrassed to make mistakes. They happen. I do them all the time. All the time.
Probably more than most.
Yes, more than most. I would not. Buddy, I could tell you. So we have just barely scraped the surface here. I can tell you so many stories. And some of them were even pretty fun. And in the world of equipment for being out there and gathering evidence, you've got contacts who has a DNA and a field kit available.
Absolutely.
So I would plug that person if you can in the show.
I will right now. I will right now, because Shelley coming to Montana puts together a very nice, and I know I've talked about this on several shows, and it's another one of those things that you just can't talk about enough because it's so important. But I'm telling you, her field evidence collection kit is extremely important to have. Even if it's not hers, make your own. But I'm telling you, she has everything in these things. If you contact Shelley, I no doubt in my mind she'd be happy to get one right out to you. So contact Shelley Covington, Montana to get that. So yeah. Great idea. Good plug.
Yeah,
exactly right.
I recommend her kit because it's the great basic kit. It's right there. If you have to buy things individually, including trail cams, things like that, you don't have to spend lots of money.
Right.
Please don't. Please don't. If you can afford a FLIR, send the FLIR to me so I can be looking at it while I fall in a hole. It's happened more than once. But no, seriously, is the inexpensive things. Don't bankrupt yourself doing this. It's very easy to do.
Right.
Very easy to do. So just, experiment with what works and doesn't work, and start with the more inexpensive things. You want things that will last, but maybe they only have to last 2 seasons.
Right.
Type thing. So
sure.
That would kind of be my advice. Try and stay out of the internecine Bigfoot wars that happen.
Yes. It took me a while to learn that one.
Yeah, those distract us from our main focus points.
Yes.
And that's about it. Have fun. Have lots of fun. You should be having fun. Even when it's serious business, you should be having fun. If you're not bleeding arterial blood, it's not a serious situation. Have fun. If you are bleeding arterial bleeding, then have someone like me around. We can probably help you, or at least take your wallet and check for cash.
Yes, yeah. Well, yeah, I will say that, Kirk's best medicine is he heard a story a while back that said laughter is the best medicine. So he pops a lot of jokes. Some are very funny. Some I'm still scratching my head going, I don't get it. But
brace yourself.
But
you veterinarian, you veterinarian. 3-armed alligator.
Your advice has been great to listen to. I think it's great advice, and I hope my listeners listen to them as well. I love the encounters. The tennis ball thing still has got me scratching my head, and I'm telling you, at some point I will make it out there, and we will definitely hit that area. That's a definite must. So with that, I guess all I can say now is thanks for joining us on the show, and with that, we're out.
Well, thanks for tolerating me.
All right, Kirk. Thank you, sir.
You bet.
And we're out.